Have you ever, looked at a building or maybe a piece of furniture, even just a simple game, and kind of wondered about the hidden story behind its design?
Hmm.
Like how much of what we see every day is really just purely from one single culture and how much is actually this beautiful, complex blend, like a conversation happening across centuries?
That's such a great question, isn't it? Because we often think of cultures as these separate boxes, like islands all on their own.
Right.
But history, and especially the history of design and how cultures mix, it tells a totally different story. It's much more about flow, constant interaction, trading ideas, and some really smart
Yes,
adaptation.
that's the core of it. And that dynamic story, that's exactly what we're diving into today with this really rich stack of sources we've gathered.
Mm-hmm.
Our mission, you could say, is to unpack all these centuries of cultural exchange, migration, trade, and adaptation that specifically shaped the Philippines. And the sources we have are, well, they're pretty diverse. They cover everything from way back in prehistory right up to more recent times.
Yeah, it's a really broad sweep. We're looking at design, art, architecture, even social structures and beliefs.
And the hope is we'll uncover some surprising things, those aha moments.
Definitely. Like how different Asian cultures didn't just stamp their influence on the Philippines, but how elements were taken, absorbed, kind of transformed, and really reimagined in creative ways.
It shows real cultural agency, doesn't it?
It really does. It proves that even everyday objects, traditions we take for granted, they carry these deep layers of history and cross-cultural conversation.
Okay, so let's start unpacking this incredible story. And to really get a grip on this tapestry of Asian influences, we kind of have to start right at the beginning, right? At the
Yeah.
very foundations of the Philippines itself.
Absolutely. You have to picture the world way back, maybe 10,000, 12,000 years ago,
Yeah.
right at the end of the last big ice age.
Okay.
There were these massive ice sheets, miles thick, covering huge parts of the planet. All that water was locked up, but then the climate starts warming up.
Right, the big melt.
Exactly, the big melt. Sea levels rise dramatically, like hundreds of feet. So what might have been connected land or maybe land bridges gets completely changed.
So the islands are formed.
The rising waters basically isolate the land masses that become the Philippines. They become this archipelago we know today, surrounded by water.
Wow. And it's amazing to think that even back then, these brand new islands weren't empty.
Not at all. Even with these huge geographical changes, people were already living there. Small groups, hunter-gatherers, really self-sufficient.
Yeah.
They were skilled at living off the land, the sea. They adapted. Their lives were totally tied to nature's cycles, foraging, hunting, fishing.
And their tools would have been pretty basic, right?
Yeah.
Stone, bone.
Yeah, stone-mown wood. Made with real ingenuity, though, enough to sustain their communities in what was, a wild, pristine landscape back then.
It's really humbling to think about these communities just thriving there, but then the world starts changing in a massive way. Even the Philippines, sort of waterlocked, couldn't avoid it.
Right. And this brings us to a huge moment in human history, the Neolithic Revolution, the agricultural revolution.
Farming changes everything.
Everything. It was a monumental shift, changed how societies worked, how they organized themselves, how they even related to the environment. And around 7,000 years ago, we see the first signs of it popping up in specific spots in Asia.
Where exactly?
Places like what's now northeastern India, Burma, Thailand, and especially South and East China. That's where key crops like rice and millet, plus loads of legumes, beans, peas were first domesticated, first farmed systematically.
And rice. Rice seems absolutely central to this story, especially in Southeast Asia.
Oh, definitely. It's not just any crop. It's tropical, subtropical.
Okay.
It needs water, lots of water. You can't just grow it anywhere.
Which makes Southeast Asia perfect for it, geographically speaking.
Absolutely perfect. The whole region is right in the monsoon zone, so you get tons of reliable rain for big chunks of the year.
Yeah.
Soils are naturally soggy, often waterlogged. Ideal conditions for wet rice farming.
Right.
And, to make this idea of ancient farming feel a bit more real, especially for the Philippines, you have to mention the carabao.
Ah, yes. The carabao. That amazing, strong, buffalo-like animal. Still crucial today in many places for plowing those wet fields.
Exactly. It's more than just an animal. It's like a symbol of rural life there, a real partner in farming. Its strength just highlights that deep connection. The land, the people, the tools they developed. It's hard to imagine large-scale rice farming without them.
Truly iconic. And the people who carried these traditions, the farming practices, other cultural bits, across such huge distances, They were the descendants of the Malayo-Polynesians, right?
Yes, precisely. They were, and still are, known as incredible seafarers, master navigators. They really understood the oceans, the currents, the winds.
Incredible voyages.
Absolutely. In these sophisticated outrigger canoes, they carried their traditions, languages, farming knowledge, their whole way of life across the entire Pacific, all the way to Madagascar in the west, Easter Island in the east. Just astonishing.
And how do we know about these migrations? It's not just guesswork, is it?
No, it's built on a lot of evidence. Mostly, these theories come from finding shared culture traits.
Like what sort of traits?
Things like specific styles of pottery, ways of weaving, types of tools, even similarities in language. Archaeologists find these remarkably similar things in sites spread across these huge areas, from island Southeast Asia out to Polynesia.
So it paints a picture of connection, even way back then.
A really ancient, deeply interconnected world, yeah. Long before we think of, like, formal trade routes.
So there's this flow of people and ideas already happening.
Yeah.
And then things really ramped up with maritime trade, thanks to those monsoon winds.
Yeah, the monsoons were like clockwork. We think of global trade now with giant ships and GPS, right?
Sure.
But back then, nature's rhythm dictated everything. These warm, tropical winds blowing consistently from the northeast in winter, then shifting to the southeast in summer. They created these natural sea highways.
Reliable pathways.
Super reliable. It was a massive boost for sea trade, made it prosperous, helped it grow rapidly all through the Southeast Asian islands.
And our sources really stressed this wasn't just about moving stuff around. It wasn't just economics. It caused widespread social, cultural, and economic changes. That sounds huge.
Oh, it was revolutionary. It wasn't just swapping spices for silk. It was swapping cultures, ideas, even power structure.
How so?
Well, this trade brought new people with different religious and political backgrounds into societies that already existed. And these newcomers didn't just stand by, they actively helped shape local histories, local hierarchies. They influenced how places were governed, who was on top, even daily routines.
And it went both ways.
Absolutely, a two-way street. The newcomers were also shaped by the cultures they ran into. It created this constant mixing and changing of identities.
And among those early influences coming from outside, India seems really important. Hindu and Buddhist traders, monks.
Yeah.
What impact did they have?
Their interactions were really significant, yeah. It went beyond just business deals. They were exchanging things like textiles and other sacred gifts for local and Indic goods. So it was this blend of spirituality and commerce.
Okay.
But what's really fascinating is how this affected local power. Early rulers in the Philippines started adopting Hindu titles, the most famous one being Raja, which is Sanskrit for king or ruler.
Why would they do that?
To boost their power, both spiritually and politically. They'd adopt the title and maybe some of the accompanying accoutrements like ceremonial objects. It was a smart move to make themselves seem more legitimate, more powerful, both to their own people and to other rulers in the region.
So it wasn't just symbolic.
Not at all. It was strategic. Even the name Visaya, for the Central Islands, that name, Vijaya, is possibly suggestive of her place in the Hindu tributary system. It hints at these islands maybe being part of a larger network linked to an Indic power. A really powerful connection showing how culture could shape politics.
That is powerful. But then, here's the puzzle. If these Indic influences were so strong, why don't we find more ancient Hindu or Buddhist stuff, like big temples or old scripts? You'd expect more physical evidence, wouldn't you?
That's an excellent question and a really crucial one. The sources point to a likely, though sad, explanation: the Spanish colonizers. When they arrived in the 16th century, they were very focused on converting everyone to Christianity. And in doing that, they systematically destroyed what they called pagan icons and books in their wake.
So, cultural erasure.
Pretty much. It wiped out a lot of the physical evidence, the artifacts, the texts of these earlier beliefs and how important they were. It left a big hole in the historical record.
That makes sense, tragically. But it also suggests the Philippines took a different path than some neighbors, right? Like Bali. The sources mention no big stone temples were built in the Philippines like in Bali.
That's a key point. Bali has these incredible grand stone temples showing its Hindu heritage. The Philippines, even though it adopted titles and maybe some governance ideas, didn't build those kinds of monuments.
Why the difference, do you think?
It suggests maybe a different kind of cultural borrowing, perhaps more focused on social structures, political legitimacy, spiritual ideas, rather than massive religious buildings. But, and this is important, Just because there aren't giant stone temples doesn't mean nothing was happening.
Okay.
There is substantial archaeological and historical evidence for lots of small active trading centers all over the islands during that time.
What were they trading?
They specialized in prestige goods, things like really nice potteries, intricate textiles, medicinal plants, and decorative plumes like exotic bird feathers, all produced for trade within these complex networks. So while one type of evidence is missing, other types show a very active engagement with the wider Asian world.
Right, so a lively trade economy, a subtle cultural exchange, even without the monumental stuff. And as these trade networks grew, another major force started moving across Southeast Asia: Islam.
Exactly. Islam really started spreading widely in Southeast Asia around 1200 CE. It mainly came to places like Sumatra and Java through Arab and Persian traders and missionaries in the 13th century.
But there were Muslims there even earlier.
Yeah, it's likely there were earlier Muslim trading posts or small communities before this bigger wave. They sort of laid the groundwork.
And this spread wasn't just happening in isolation, was it? It was tied to Islam's rise elsewhere.
Definitely. After the Prophet Muhammad's death in 632 CE, Islam spread incredibly fast, and the Arabian Peninsula, Mecca, Medina, became this huge center for commerce, culture, learning, a global powerhouse, really.
And that influenced trade everywhere.
Massively. Arab and other Muslim traders and sailors were famous for their skills and networks. They became the essential middlemen, linking Asian merchants, say from China, with European traders over in the Mediterranean. They built this vast network connecting basically the whole known world.
And in the Philippines, this led to powerful sultanates forming, especially in the south.
Yes, the South saw the biggest impact. One of the earliest and most important sultanates developed in the Sulu Islands, strategically located near Borneo.
And how did Islam get to Sulu? Was it just Arab traders?
Interestingly, no. Our sources say it was brought there by early Chinese traders and Muslim missionaries during the Ming Dynasty in the 14th century.
Wow, so Chinese trade routes helped spread Islam.
It looks like it. It shows how interconnected these influences were. They weren't always separate streams. They often flowed together, one facilitating the other.
And just like with the Hindu titles, adopting Islam wasn't just about faith for the local rulers, was it? There were practical reasons, too.
Oh, absolutely. Rulers on Mindanao and other islands quickly saw the advantages. Participating in these growing Muslim trade networks meant real benefits.
Like what?
More wealth, for starters. Access to bigger markets, new goods. That wealth helped them solidify their power. Maybe hire bigger armies, acquire more slaves, which were signs of status then. It also made it easier to collect tribute and, importantly, build new alliances with other powerful Muslim states in the region.
So it was a smart political and economic move.
Definitely. It offered a clear path to becoming more powerful in a region that was changing fast.
Okay, so we've covered the Malayo-Polynesian foundations, the Indic influences, the rise of Islam. Now let's turn to arguably one of the biggest, most deeply rooted influences, China. The dragon, as you called it.
Yeah, the Chinese influence is just immense, and it really intensified around the 1400s when a major power shift happened. The Srivijaya Empire, which had dominated sea trade, started to decline.
Trading and opening.
Exactly. And the Chinese moved in quickly, becoming the dominant force in Southeast Asian sea trade. Their reach and influence just exploded.
And there were things happening inside China, too, pushing them outwards. Our sources mention a big population boom during the Ming Dynasty. Yes, that's a fascinating point. A huge population increase in China during the Ming era, 1368, 1644, plus these frequent terrible outbreaks of diseases like measles and smallpox. They list epidemics in 1407, 1410, 1411, 1413.
Wow.
These pressures likely pushed the Chinese leadership to look outwards, to find more resources, more supplies beyond their own borders. This internal need probably fueled more interaction with places like the Philippines, leading to a deeper, more constant influence.
And you can really see that influence in so many aspects of Philippine life.
Yeah.
Starting with art and everyday objects, like silk.
Silk, absolutely. Chinese traders brought it in during the time of the Datis, the local chiefs, and it just took off. It stayed the most popular material for pants and shirts right up until the end of the Spanish period in the late 1800s.
That's a long time. Shows real adoption.
Definitely. It wasn't just a fad. It became part of the fabric of life, signifying status, comfort.
And mahjong, Another clear example, especially craftsmanship involved.
Oh yeah, Mahjong is a perfect case study. The sources describe these exquisite tiles made from ivory combined with bamboo, housed in these elegant wooden boxes, often trimmed with precious metals, gemstones, mother of pearl, or wood inlay.
Sounds beautiful.
It was. It wasn't just a game. It was like an art object. It brought this level of intricate craft and luxury right into homes. Became a social thing, too.
Now, porcelain. There's an interesting twist there, isn't there?
Right.
About how it was used differently in the Philippines.
Yes, this is a really key insight. It shows that cultural borrowing isn't passive. So the Chinese used their porcelain as everyday wear for eating, storing things, normal household use.
Right.
But the early Filipinos, they utilized them largely for ritual and festival purposes. That's huge. It means they took this imported thing and gave it a completely new local sacred meaning. It wasn't just copying, it was transformation, recontextualizing it to fit their own beliefs.
That's fascinating. What about specific types, like Canton polychrome pots?
Right, those were distinctive. They were square pots, usually Canton porcelain, and you could recognize them by the underglaze hand painting. Classic Chinese scenes, landscapes, flowers, birds, dragons.
So they brought those specific visuals in.
Exactly. Introduced that artistic style, those motifs. And it wasn't just pots. Things like those barrel-shaped Qing garden stools were common too. And the sources say people still use them today as plant stands and tables. Shows their lasting appeal, both useful and decorative.
So the influence goes way beyond just small items. It shaped entire cities, like Binondo in Manila.
Binondo is such a great example, famous as the oldest Chinatown in the world, right? Founded officially by the Spanish in 1594.
And they put it right across the river from Intramuros, the Spanish center.
Deliberately, so that colonial rulers could keep a close eye on their migrant subjects. Very strategic placement. And this is crucial, Binondo wasn't just created by the Spanish. It was already a hub of Chinese commerce before they even arrived.
Wow.
It was already the center of trade run by Chinese merchants. The Spanish just sort of formalized it and kept watch. It stayed the commercial heart of Manila, largely Filipino-Chinese run.
And this wasn't just a Manila thing. Cebu City also has a huge Chinese connection.
Oh, definitely. Cebu is known as a city of Chinese and Chinese mestizos. The saying, the whole Cebu is one big Chinatown, really captures how deep that influence runs. It's fundamental to the city's identity.
And the galleon trade played a role in that too.
Yes, the galleon trade, connecting the Philippines to Mexico and Spain, also brought an influx of Chinese and immigrants, not just to Manila, but to other major ports like Cebu. It just strengthened that Chinese presence across the islands.
And you can see this physically in buildings like the Cebu Taoist Temple.
Absolutely. That temple, built in 1972, is cited as one of the best examples of Sinoy architecture, that unique mix of Chinese and Filipino style.
Sino, right?
Yeah. Built by the Filipino-Chinese community up on a mountain in La Hug, Cebu, the entrance is clearly patterned after Chinese temples. You see the traditional roof lines, the decorations. It's a very visible link to that heritage.
And what about private homes? Especially those of the Chinese mestizo families? How did that mix of cultures show up in their houses?
Well, these Chinese mestizo families were often quite wealthy. They had houses in Cebu City, farms outside. They influenced every aspect of Cebu urban life, and intermarriage was common. Between the Principalia, the native elite, the ruling families, and equally well-off Spanish and Chinese folks. This led to houses that were specifically configured to accommodate diverse identities, classes, and even ethnicities.
Like Casa Gordo.
Casa Gordo in Cebu from the mid-1800s is a perfect example. It's like a living piece of architecture showing that cultural blending.
What specific features in those houses scream Chinese influence?
Several things stand out. You often see stone walls in the ground floor combined with wood for walls in the second floor. That mix is practical for the tropics, but it also echoes Chinese building techniques.
Okay.
Then there's lattice work. The sources call it a starkly Chinese influence. You see it in a 1730 Cebu house example. It looks beautiful, but it also helps with ventilation and privacy.
Makes sense.
And maybe the most distinctive feature is the hip Chinese roofline, with the sloping sides, often combined with whole-length sliding elements, probably sliding windows or screens. These details really mark the houses as unique blends.
So the influence goes from the outside structure right into the interior. Apparently the Chinese even introduced the idea of furniture.
That's a really interesting point from the sources. It suggests that the Chinese, who were accustomed to both manner, meaning their lifestyle, and using furniture, likely taught the Filipinos to incorporate simple forms of furniture, like dining tables and benches, in the interiors.
So a shift from maybe sitting on mats?
Potentially, yeah. A shift towards a more structured, furnished interior. A pretty fundamental change in how living spaces were used.
And Filipinos picked up the furniture-making skills themselves.
They did. While Chinese and mestizo Chinese artisans were the first furniture makers, bringing their skills, native Filipinos eventually picked up the craft. And that led to unique regional styles developing, like Batangas furniture, known for its specific chest display pieces, shows that localization, that creative adaptation again.
Are there specific furniture pieces with clear Chinese roots mentioned?
Yes. The almario, which is a type of wardrobe or cabinet, was apparently inspired by open-shelf Chinese ink stick stands. You know, those tiered stands for displaying ink sticks.
Oh, wow.
And there's a cool story about Ate, a Chinese craftsman from Binondo. He created this bed design called the kalabasa bed, squash bed, possibly because of its shape. It uniquely blended European and tropical plant forms with Chinese elements. These examples really show that mixing and matching of styles.
And it wasn't just individual pieces. Chinese craftsmen, maybe with some Japanese help too, brought in more advanced techniques, sophisticated structures.
Absolutely. They introduced sophisticated structural elements that improved both the look and the strength of furniture. Things like wing-like flanges, those projections you see, decorative but also add support. Spandrels, the carved bits in corners or arches.
Right.
Concepts like anchored support, splatting that central piece in a chair back, and splayed legs for stability and style. These weren't just decorative. They were about better construction. Plus, they brought a whole new set of Asian motifs and details.
What kind of motifs became common?
Things like lion-masked legs and horse hoof feet, giving furniture a solid, powerful look. Symbolic patterns, too, like the cloud and Ju sacred mushrooms motif, which are lucky symbols in China, and that distinctive Ming chain pattern interlocking circles. These became part of the Philippines craftsman's artistic vocabulary, enriching the local designs.
And even the layout of the house itself. Feng Shui played a role.
Yes, Feng Shui, that ancient Chinese practice of arranging things for harmony and good energy. It apparently had a real impact on interior planning. The sources say symmetry of plan layout was carefully observed, and that the house's orientation was influenced by the concepts of Feng Shui.
So where you put doors and windows mattered.
Exactly. It gave mystical significance to all aspects of planning. Decisions were guided by ideas about energy flow, auspicious directions, all believed to bring good luck, health, prosperity. It shows how deep the influence went beyond just looks into the philosophy of the space itself.
China's influence is just massive then.
Yeah.
Trade, cities, furniture, even mysticism. But there's another key Asian player, Japan. Their impact seems maybe more complicated, especially because of World War II narratives.
You're right, it is more complex. Finding historical accounts about Japanese influence on building or architecture during the occupation that aren't about the war is tough.
Why is that?
Understandably, most records focus on the tragic and unfortunate experiences of Filipinos at the height of World War II. It was a really traumatic time, so stories of suffering and resistance naturally dominate the memory.
But the sources suggest it wasn't only negative, that the Japanese had other intentions.
Exactly. They point out this period did not only give rise to violence. In fact, the Japanese intended to establish good relations with the Filipinos. This was part of their whole Greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere idea.
Right.
So while the war was horrific, you also had situations like Filipino officials who worked with new colonizers, people like Jorge Vargas and President Jose P. Laurel. They, to different extents, supported the reorientation of Philippine education through the promotion of Japanese language. It was presented as a way towards regional unity, even under occupation, so it's complex collaboration, coercion, influence, all mixed together.
And that wartime period even left visual symbols in popular culture.
Yeah, it's interesting. In Filipino movies about the war, the classic Bahay na Bato, that stone-based house, was often used to portray a garrison or Japanese headquarters.
How would they show it was Japanese?
Often just with a simple visual cue. A red dot white cloth banner, like the Japanese flag. It became this instant symbol of the occupation in the collective imagination.
But this Japanese cultural influence wasn't forced overnight, was it? It was more gradual.
Definitely. The sources say submission to Japanese rule and the acceptance of Japanese culture was not quickly imposed. It was more like the Spanish using religion or the Americans using education over time. The Japanese also implemented a process of influencing Filipino people, a gradual cultural shift alongside the military presence.
But Japan's influence started way before the war, didn't it? With laborers in the early 20th century.
Yes, that pre-war presence is really important. An American governor general invited about 3,000 Japanese laborers early in the 1900s. Mainly major infrastructure projects, building tough mountain roads like in Benguet Canyon Road is the famous example, and also some work in Manila. Their engineering skills were needed.
And they stayed. Some of them.
Some did. One group settled in Baguio and started these amazing vegetable and strawberry gardens, really changing the local farming scene. Another group went down to Davao, which was more frontier territory then.
What did they do in Davao?
They explored the forests, cut down massive trees, monstrous trees, the source says, and planted huge areas with hemp. That hemp became famous worldwide as Manila hemp.
Why?
So these interactions, building roads, farming, living alongside Filipinos, must have led to some physical manifestations, especially in the use and treatment of interior space. And Japanese craftsmen working alongside the Chinese were also crucial in building houses and other structures, adding their own skills and style.
Can we pinpoint any specific early Japanese design influences?
Yeah. The sources mention a few things, like the use of lozenges, those diamond shapes, in the chrysanthemums motifs in the design of furniture. The chrysanthemum is a Japanese symbol, so that makes sense.
Okay.
Also, things like sliding windows and Persianas, those slatted blinds were sometimes attributed to them. Features that help with airflow and light. Good for the tropics.
Now, zooming out again, this wasn't just happening in the Philippines, right? There was this global craze for Japanese things, Japanism.
Absolutely critical context. The world's love affair with the things Japanese started way back, maybe 17th century. Manila galleons, Dutch ships brought Japanese goods, lacquerware, porcelain to America and Europe. It sparked this fascination, especially among the wealthy.
But then Japan closed itself off for ages. The Sakoku policy.
Exactly, Sakoku, closed country. From the early 17th century, Japan shut its doors, mostly fearing colonization and Christianity. For over 200 years, they had very limited contact. They were only forced to reopen in the 19th century by the Americans, Commodore Perry's famous mission.
And that long isolation just made Japanese stuff even more desirable when it became available again.
Totally. It heightened the mystique. When Japan reopened, the global demand was huge. Look at Tiffany & Co. We think jewelry now, but back then they were more like a fancy goods store. They grew quickly by selling Japanese lacquerware and other curiosities.
Right.
And it wasn't just real Japanese goods. People made japanned articles, basically faux lacquered stuff made of wood or paper mache to copy the look. Super popular in the Victorian era. Shows how much people wanted that style.
And this Japanism wasn't just about decoration. It actually influenced major art movements.
Hugely influential. It was an important element in pre-Raphaelite painting, Impressionism, Post-Impressionism. Same in decorative arts, the aesthetic movement, Art Nouveau, even Art Deco.
Which famous artists were into it?
Big names, Monet, Degas, Van Gogh. They were all keen collectors of Japanese art, especially those woodblock prints. They studied them closely.
How did it influence their work?
Different ways. Some, like Tissot, literally painted models in Japanese dress with oriental props. Very direct. Others, like Degas, were subtler, adopting things like asymmetrical composition or unusual viewpoints inspired by Japanese prints.
And even opera. Madame Butterfly.
Yeah, Puccini's opera in the early 20th century shows how deeply this fascination permeated Western culture, even in a romanticized way.
So with all that global interest, how did Japanese art specifically find its way back into Philippine homes after Japan reopened?
Well, after the Meiji Restoration in 1868, Japan started exporting heavily again. Things like satsuma and yamari tableware, that colorful, detailed pottery, often with gold. They successfully invaded Philippine homes, became popular decorative items, showing that appreciation for Japanese craft.
And besides tableware, are there physical spaces in the Philippines reflecting Japanese architecture?
A good public example is the Japanese Garden in Rizal Park, Luneta in Manila.
What's its purpose?
It was built to promote friendship and tolerance between Japan and the Philippines. It has typical features like a lagoon and a bridge. It's meant to be a peaceful place, a symbol of connection.
But comparing Japanese-style simple, clean lines with typical Filipino taste. There's a contrast, right? Filipinos tend to like more ornate things.
There is a definite contrast.
Yeah.
The sources say Japanese simple and clean lines are incomparable to Filipino penchant for carved, the intricate, and the multicolored. Filipino design often loves detail, color, layers.
So complete adoption of Japanese minimalism seems unlikely.
Probably unlikely, yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite mesh with the core Filipino aesthetic, but
Ape.
that doesn't mean it's ignored. The sources suggest the Filipino understanding of such distinct way can be used to balance things. It's about intelligent integration, using elements of Japanese simplicity or function to complement, not replace, Filipino styles. Finding a harmony.
You see that integration happening later, especially in interior design, even surprisingly soon after the war.
It is surprising. Japanese motifs became fashionable as early as 1955, just 10 years after WWII ended. Shows a lasting appeal that went beyond the conflict, maybe boosted by that global Japanism.
And maybe linked to wellness ideas.
That too. Filipinos appreciated the concept of wellness living, which really clicks with Japanese design's focus on calm, nature, harmony. And professional designers in the 50s and 60s actively simulated Japanese interiors using Oriental elements. Willie Fernandez, a key figure, incorporated Japanese mural painting and furniture into modern Filipino spaces.
Which eventually led to things like Zen and minimalism becoming popular.
Exactly. Zen and minimalism was the natural development stemming from interest in Asia in the 1990s. That style restrained, spaces that are stark, austere, Spartan, devoid of decoration became really trendy. People wanted that calm, ordered feel. It shows a deeper engagement, moving beyond just motifs to the whole philosophy of the space.
So Japan's influence is this complex layer. Early labor, subtle design hints, global trends shaping modern interiors. Okay, let's loop back to Islam, an influence with really deep roots, especially down south.
Right. As we mentioned, Islam's main spread into Southeast Asia was around 1200 CE, mostly via Arab and Persian traders and missionaries hidden places like Sumatra and Java in the 13th century. But remember, there were likely earlier Muslim outposts.
And this was all tied into Arabia becoming this major world center.
Absolutely. After 632 CE, Arabia becomes this hub of commerce, culture, knowledge. Arab and Muslim traders become the key go-betweens, linking Asia and Europe, creating this massive, interconnected trade network.
Which, in the Philippines, led to those sultanates in the south, Sulu being one of the first.
Yes, Sulu, near Borneo. And remember that interesting detail, Islam arrived there partly via early Chinese traders and Muslim missionaries during the Ming era, shows that interplay of influences again.
And adopting Islam was, again, a strategic move for rulers.
Very much so. Rulers in Mindanao and elsewhere saw the benefits of joining the Muslim trade networks. More wealth, which meant more power, larger armies, and slaves, stronger ability to collect tribute and build new alliances with other Muslim powers, a practical path to strength and influence.
And this distinct culture in the south led to unique art, even in games.
Yeah, it's a great way to see it. Compare the regular Filipino game board Sungkahan with the Maranao version called the Tidora. The Tidora has more cups, 16, and is carved with Arabic motifs. Same game, different aesthetic.
And chess sets, too.
Murano chess sets often have pieces made of horn or ivory carved in Arabic design, sometimes decorated with silver coins. Beautiful examples of applying specific artistic traditions to everyday things.
Moving to architecture, the South really looks different because of Islam, doesn't it?
Completely different cultural environment down there, architecturally speaking. You only find a separate architectural expression for the house of political and social leader in Muslim areas.
The
torogan is the prime example. That grand, distinctive house for the Datu or Sultan with elaborate carvings showing their status.
And, of course, the mosque, the key religious building.
Exactly. Only in Muslim areas do we find distinctly native religious architecture embodied in the mosque. They're central community symbols, expressions of faith, often blending Islamic principles with local styles and materials.
Any standout examples?
The Grand Mosque in Cotabato City is stunning. Huge, gold-plated domes and minarets towering over 40 meters. Really impressive. Finished in 2011, partly funded by Brunei, showing those international connections.
And the pink one.
Ah, yes, the Masjid de Maucom in Maguindanao, funded by the mayor back then. It's famous for being painted pink to symbolize peace and love, built by workmen together to represent unity and interfaith. A powerful visual statement.
And presumably the interiors of these mosques also reflect Islamic design principles, even if our sources don't detail specific Filipino examples.
Precisely. Based on the grand exteriors and general Islamic design, you'd expect interiors with intricate geometric patterns, beautiful calligraphy, Quranic verses, careful use of light, maybe rich textiles. The focus would be on openness, Serenity, contemplation, the unique architecture definitely points to a distinct interior design language tied deeply to faith.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered so much ground. From the earliest migrations, through Indic threads, the rise of Islam, the huge Chinese legacy, the complex Japanese influence. It really is this vibrant tapestry. Looking back, what's the main takeaway for you about all these Asian influences on Philippine design?
For me, it's consistently this amazing process of adoption and adaptation. Nothing was just passively received. Elements were actively taken, creatively absorbed, transformed, and then, brilliantly reimagined into something uniquely Filipino. It's this incredible blend where every thread from India, China, Japan, the Islamic world gets rewoven. It shows amazing cultural resilience, a real genius for synthesis.
It really makes you see how history is just embedded in everything around us if you look closely. The shape of a house, a pattern on a pot, the layout of a garden, echoes of centuries of interaction. Makes you want to look for those threads in everyday life, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It totally changes how you see things. You start noticing the layers, the stories of trade, the clever ways people adapted things. You realize culture is never fixed. It's always moving, borrowing, changing. It's alive.
And that brings us to a really interesting final thought to chew on. Given how deeply all these diverse Asian influences are woven into Philippine culture and design, creating this incredibly rich, layered identity, what could that teach us about cultural identity itself, especially now in our super globalized world?
Yeah.
It kind of suggests identity isn't this rigid single thing, is it? Maybe it's more like a dynamic mosaic, stronger and richer precisely because it's open to new influences and has this amazing ability to creatively reinvent itself.